and cooperation opportunities with Estonia. The event itself is hosted and co-hosted and organized by the Estonian Ministry of the Environment and Embassy of the Netherlands in Estonia. My name is Ivar Krusenberg, and I'm CEO of Power Up Fuel Cells, as well as Senior Research Fellow of the National Institute of Chemical Physics and Biophysics. And I'm joining today's event as a moderator. I would also like to warmly welcome our panelists, Mr. Noah van Hulst, who's the hydrogen envoy at the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy in the Netherlands. Mr. van Hulst has prior been the Dutch ambassador of the OECD, as well as the chairman of the International Energy Agency. And last not least, Secretary General of the International Energy Forum. Then our second panelist today is Patrick Knuben, the team coordinator of the hydrogen in the New Energy Coalition in the Netherlands. And Patrick also has been leading for more than 15 years the Energy Valley Foundation in the Netherlands. Our third speaker today is Bart Biebeek, who's the executive director of the Fuel Cells and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking. It says it all. And he also has more than 10 years of working experience with Toyota, who's one of the leading companies of the fuel cell technology nowadays. And our only representative from the Estonia, Mrs. Kristi Klaas, Deputy Secretary General from the Ministry of the Environment of Estonia. And her specialty is the strategy planning and the climate policy. So it's really relevant today. And the webinar today is going to be 1 hour and 40 minutes. The first hour is going to be dedicated to the presentations by 4 of our panelists to get better understanding and overview of the current situation with the hydrogen energy, the policy making, the funding opportunities, et cetera, Really important is also to address the current situation with the hydrogen planning, the infrastructure planning, and the policy making strategies in Estonia, and maybe also learn important aspects of the long story of the Netherlands with the hydrogen and the fuel cells. And the panelists' presentations will be followed by the discussion, where also the audience can post the questions, which will be picked and given by me to the panelists. So I would like to, before we start with the presentations, also remind you that you have a chance to post these questions to the chat, which will be then after the presentations. Hopefully we manage to ask all the questions, but at least handpicked will be some. So hereby I would like to actually give the stage to Mr. Noah van Hulst for his speech.
Great, thank you very much for that kind introduction, and it's a pleasure to be with you. If we can start the slides. Yes, the next slide, please. So let me try to give you a quick overview of what the Netherlands is doing in terms of hydrogen. First of all, the question is why? Why hydrogen? What's the role for hydrogen? So we like to say very much in the Netherlands that hydrogen is not the silver bullet of the energy transition. It is not the solution to all our problems, but it is what we like to call the missing link missing link in the energy transition. And why the missing link? Because up to now, energy transition, in our view, has been mainly an electricity transition. It has been very successful in introducing solar and wind power to the electricity mix, but we haven't really tackled all of the other sectors. And this is where we believe hydrogen has a very key role to play, because we cannot do everything with electricity. Many of you know probably electricity is 20% of the final energy consumption, roughly. And yes, we can do much more with electricity, electrification, but you will not get much further than doubling that share of, or maybe even getting to half of the energy mix. So half of the energy mix, basically, you still need to somehow find a transition, a decarbonized solution without electricity. And that is where molecules, green molecules, clean hydrogen comes in. And this is why we are pushing it very hard in the Netherlands. Because yes, you can also do biogas, but there are serious volume limitations. So the main contribution is going to come from clean hydrogen in greening the molecules. Now, is that going to be easy? No. This is a slide from the IEA that I'm showing. Very important flagship project, flagship publication in 2019. Clean hydrogen still has high costs, so we need to bring down the cost, we need to build the infrastructure, etc. Next slide, please. Now, for the Netherlands, the big framework is our so-called climate agreement, which was already concluded last year, where we have a very ambitious climate objective, minus 49% of CO2 reduction in 2030. And even within the European context, we are defending, or we are proposing a more stringent target of minus 55%. And the EU is still negotiating that. But having said that, even in that climate agreement, we already have some ambitious targets for hydrogen, which you can see here on the slide. We are talking about 3 to 4 gigawatt of electrolysis capacity, green hydrogen production by 2030, which means a tremendous effort, because you have to know that nowadays, we have a 1 megawatt installation working in the Netherlands. We are talking about investment decisions of 20 megawatt electrolyzer project. And basically, we are talking about a complete scale up of this size, 10, 20 to 100 or 500 megawatt by 2025, and gigawatt scale in 2030. That is the challenge that we have, and we have set in place a support mechanisms to make that work. And of course, also in transportation, we have ambitious targets as well, mainly also focused on the heavy duty transportation. Next slide, please. Now, on top of this climate agreement, which was basically covering all of the energy and climate policy, we have a separate hydrogen strategy which has just been launched in April. So this spring, very new. We found it necessary to underline once again the critical role of hydrogen as a systematic role for the energy transition. So we see it not just as another promising technology that you need, but really as a carrier for zero carbon energy supply for molecules. And again, we also looked at all the application areas and added additional application areas compared to the previous year, including agriculture and other sectors as well. And we managed also to secure even more funding for helping to scale up the green hydrogen. I should say here, to be complete, that we are also looking at so-called blue hydrogen, which means produced by fossil fuels, but where you capture the CO2 and you store the CO2 underground, offshore the North Sea. Next slide, please. Now, I won't go through all of these elements. You can read it if you're interested in the document on the policy. But I want to say here that we try to tackle all of the pillars of policy that can help support the penetration and the scaling up of hydrogen in the decades to come, in the next 10 years. So that includes certification, guarantees of origin. It includes, of course, very important safety standards. It includes also maybe new ways of tendering wind offshore directly for the production of green hydrogen, as well as considering blending of hydrogen in the gas grids. And last but not least, and this is why I'm very happy also to be attending this and participating in this seminar, we attach a lot of importance to international cooperation. We think that if we in Europe work together internationally, we can go much faster, we can do the scaling up faster and get the cost down if we work together from the start of this scaling up. Next slide, please. Now, what are the drivers? Why are we pushing so much? Well, first of all, in the Netherlands, we have a lot of already existing production of hydrogen, but it's all what we call so-called gray hydrogen, means produced by fossil fuels. You're talking about the refineries, chemical industries, etc. So there's a huge volume already of hydrogen production, which is a good starting point. It's the bad news. The bad news is that it has a lot of CO2 emissions. The good news is you can use it as a starting point to start basically decarbonizing that hydrogen, blue hydrogen, and also ultimately green hydrogen. And we have a large offshore wind potential that we can utilize for that. And we are ramping up, basically using 11.5 gigawatt in 2030. We will add to our power mix, mainly because we still need to green our power mix. We need to make it more, we need to ramp up the share of renewables in our power mix. But after 2030, you're seeing here 40 gigawatt on the slide. Some people say it might be 60 or even more gigawatt. Potential can all be used to produce green hydrogen in large volumes after 2030. Next slide, please. Can I have the next slide, please? Here you see a map of the Netherlands, and you see also all of the huge volume of projects that we basically, companies are working on. So you should understand also from the Netherlands that there is a huge bottom-up dynamics of all kind of companies that want to go for decarbonization through hydrogen. And I will not bore you by going through all of these projects, but I do want to point out that it starts really, as you see in the map, in the first couple of years, it starts in what we call the industrial clusters, and they are mainly at the sea. So the port of Rotterdam, Zeeland in the south of the Netherlands, the port of Amsterdam, where you have big refineries, steel companies, chemical companies, the north of the Netherlands, but Patrick will cover that, I'm sure, much better than I can, and Gemmelot in the south of the Netherlands, where all of the industries are. That's where the scaling up starts, where you have a lot of industrial gray hydrogen that you can start greening, decarbonizing, and you can build up the local infrastructure. And then the yellow line which you see is basically what we call the hydrogen backbone. That is repurposed gas pipeline, which will be completely dedicated to transportation of clean hydrogen. By 2026, this will be ready in our planning. Next slide, please. This is just to show that in the Netherlands, if you compare it globally, we have a lot of important projects. The Hydrogen Council lists 23 big projects, flagship projects around the world. 3 of those, of the 23, are based currently in the Netherlands. Next slide, please. So again, this is what you have already seen, the backbone, the hydrogen backbone, which is an important part of the story. We have, luckily, I can say, our transmission system operators, both for gas and electricity, are working together on looking what is the infrastructure, How does it look like in 2050? And they are working together to make that into an integrated energy system. And of course, we are eyeballing beyond 2030, even artificial islands in a project with Denmark and Germany offshore the North Sea, where you can think about potentially big, large-scale offshore hydrogen production, which will then also be basically by gas pipelines transported back to the mainland. And transportation through gas pipelines of hydrogen is much more efficient, much more cost-effective than all kind of transmission lines in electricity. Next slide, please. Again, this is the project of the Netherlands, the north of the Netherlands, but let me skip that because I'm sure Patrick will go into that. The next slide, please. Very importantly, we have started strong bilateral cooperation with Germany. This is a so-called High 3 project, where we are looking at something completely new, potentially even wind offshore from Germany that could be landed, could be transported to the Netherlands, then turned into green hydrogen, and then use the gas pipelines basically to transport it all the way back in the form of green molecules to the industrial needs of the German industry in the Ruhrgebiet, in North Rhine-Westphalia, and also the south of the Netherlands, which would be a complete game changer if we manage to pull this off. Next slide, please. Very comparable, a very concrete project that already Shell and Gasunie are now planning to build new additional gigawatt scale of wind energy, again, to produce green hydrogen and to transport it to the rest of Northwestern Europe. Next slide, please. Now you may ask about storage. Storage, we are looking very much at salt caverns that they can ideally place to have large-scale storage of hydrogen. And as you can see, many countries are very well placed. I'm afraid Estonia is not yet on this slide included, but I am sure you can also find some storage for your hydrogen there. Next slide, please. This is just to say and to conclude my presentations, again, we place our efforts very much in an international European perspective. We can do much more if we build a European hydrogen infrastructure where we can help each other to scale up the hydrogen from production to offtake and transportation. Next slide, please. This is why we are eyeballing the buildup of a European hydrogen backbone. You see the yellow lines or snakes, as some people say, going through all of Europe, which is basically mostly repurposed gas pipelines. And as we have to go for decarbonization of molecules, the whole of Europe will need to go sooner or later to decarbonize gas. So those gas pipelines, for very little cost, can be repurposed for transportation of hydrogen. Last slide, please. So we have submitted some ideas to the European Union, and we very much hope that the European Union will come up with an ambitious EU hydrogen strategy early July. They tell us it's going to come, and this can help us a lot, all of us, all of the member states, to build this European infrastructure for hydrogen. And again, as I said before, together we can go much faster and get the cost down much sooner. Let me end it here. Thank you very much for your attention, and happy to take questions later.
Thank you, Noy. Definitely, audience, after your great presentation, will have many questions. In relation to that, I would like to remind to audience that there's a Q&A button in the bottom of the Zoom. So please use that to forward the questions, which we will address after the presentations. But now it's the right time to go to the northern Netherlands. So Patrick, floor is yours. Patrick, you're muted.
Hello.
Yes, good.
Yet Pieva, as I think it's the correct Estonian expression. Thank you very much for having me invited to express and explain, let's say, the situation in the northern Netherlands. Let me just get the clearance on the screen. Does it work like this? Yep, it's in. Okay, I'm going to explain how we in the northern Netherlands, as a part of the Netherlands, as Mr. Van Hulsen explained the strategy of the Netherlands just before me. I named the presentation Green Hydrogen in the Northern Netherlands and Power to the Molecules, because that's what it's about. It's also about unlocking the potential of hydrogen as a very versatile molecule, as Mr. Van Hulsen said, the missing link, indeed the missing link, because it can do a lot of things other energy carriers cannot do. Well, first let me start with the introduction of our region. Where are we located in the northern Netherlands? Well, of course, this is, of course, the North Sea region with the beautiful country of the Netherlands on top, and we are located in this little circle. The circle is comprising of 3 provinces. You may have heard of the province of Friesland, Groningen, and Drenthe. About 1.7 million inhabitants, 10% of the Dutch population, and about 25% of the Dutch land area, just to give you an idea of the magnitude. Well, and let me then directly start with the challenge and the opportunity. The Northern Netherlands has been well known to the world because of the availability of the biggest onshore gas field, the Slochteren field. That has given us much, but in the coming years, the Slochteren field will run down in production. It will eventually go to, let's say, a zero production. And that in itself will create an effect on the regional economy. The 2 graphs, you can see the top one is, let's say, the envisaged production from the field, which goes down. And the other one, the bottom one, is depicting, let's say, the effect on the regional economy. And wouldn't as much focus on the numbers and the absolute numbers. The effect is that in the region, there is a dramatic effect because of, let's say, the stepping out of natural gas. And because the region has a tradition with natural gas, is, I think, excellently suited to pick up the challenge of hydrogen, because a region needs a business. And we think that our region is very well equipped to pick up the challenge of the green hydrogen. And that's what we done. So from the principle that a region needs a business, we've created a plan together with our well-established and maybe well-known colleague, Professor Ed van Wijk. We conceived this plan. It's called Green Hydrogen Economy in the Northern Netherlands. It's now 3 years old, and it helped us kickstarting the development of green hydrogen in our region, and I think for some part also in the Netherlands. But there is more. We also had quite intensive discussion with industry, and that has resulted in the creation of a plan, a regional hydrogen investment agenda. And to the right-hand side, you can see a map of the provinces of Groningen, the top one, and the province of Drenthe, the bottom one, and some 30 to 35 industries have put their strengths together and have collaborated in creating this investment plan, which actually states that if this industry wants to decarbonize, it will require, of course, tremendous investments. And in this plan, it is stated that to enable, in order to be able to make this transition to decarbonize this industry, a ballpark figure of about 3 billion euros is needed. And it's intended to use this money to, let's say, decarbonize the industry via not only hydrogen, but also electrification, but in a sense, phasing out fossil energy use. And this plan is one of the basic elements in our proposal called Heaven, which I'll come to later. So let me just shortly recap. I think we are convinced that our region is quite well suited to pick up the challenge of green hydrogen because of, let's say, the economic necessity, the arguments, and because a lot of renewable power is coming on shore already. We are quite well located for absorbing the power from, let's say, the North Sea, the wind offshore power. In total, in the Ames harbor, that's our most northern harbor, about 6 gigawatts of power is being produced via ways of a coal plant, 2 natural gas plants, via interconnectors, HVDC couplers coming from Norway and Denmark, and of course via the connection of wind parks. And this gives us a very interesting position, because if the wind offshore industry will grow as we intend to, and I think there are maybe some parallels to this Estonian development on hydrogen or wind parks, that gives an interesting combination, that the power comes on shore, but the power has to be redistributed down into the country. You need power lines for that, and building and constructing power lines together with the permits is a long-term business. But in our region, having this natural gas field, the Slochteren field available, and the availability of a lot of natural gas pipelines evacuating this natural gas, let's say, into Europe, this gives us a tremendous opportunity to, in due course, to repurpose the pipelines, and instead of transporting natural gas, transporting hydrogen, which is locally produced in the region. So that gives us a very good starting point to start this transition to hydrogen. We have a lot of industry, as we mentioned with the industry agenda, which are already, because they use a lot of natural gas, are quite well known with hydrogen. Hydrogen is a very, very common, let's say, energy carrier in industry. Several billions of cubic meters of hydrogen are used in the Netherlands as well. I think 8 billion cubic meters per year. And so these elements, together with the vast infrastructure and the potential of the underground gas storage, as Mr. Van Helst also said, in the salt caverns, gives us a very good starting point to implement and deploy green hydrogen in society, in the various markets. So we think we are quite well situated for that. And the region has a intent to, let's say, make a step towards, let's say, a hydrogen economy. Or in other words, you could say that we want to become an integrated hydrogen economy, where we will use the hydrogen in ever more applications in society. And this is a very nice graph by Roland Berger, which actually states we more or less are here. Some fueling stations, some developments, but still a bit isolated. But we want to go here. We want to have hydrogen being used in society via a deep penetration. So everywhere where you could use it, we should start using it. And this is the essence of the path we are going. We want to use the green hydrogen ever more, first in industry, that's the starting point, then in the other applications in mobility and industry. Now I'm coming to our, let's say, flagship project, which we named Heaven. This is a picture stating that the partners, it's about 31 partners, are collaborating with us, and we are very happy that we are also being very heavily supported by the FCHU, Mr. Biberg's organization, and of course the EU, because otherwise, without this help, you could never make it. It is very necessary to use these European funds to help you make the transition. That's what the funds are for. So we are quite proud that we have been selected as a Hydrogen Valley region in Europe. And this project Heaven gives us the position to explain and demonstrate that we can do that. This project is based on application of hydrogen in 3 sectors in industry. So we will work together with the industry, of course. And the industry will make the investments into a 20 megawatt electrolyzer for biomethanol, green methanol production, a 40 to 50 megawatt electrolyzer for green kerosene to help aviation industry becoming less climate intensive. And in total, it's a very big amount, up to about 2,000 tons per year, can even run up to 7,300 by 2025, should be 2025 there. And then we will also apply it in the urban heat sector, and of course also in industrial heat. In the Netherlands, we have a penetration of gas networks of about 99.9%. So every household is in some way or another connected to a gas grid. We heat our houses on natural gas, we cook on natural gas, because we have the availability of this natural gas. What we are going to do in the project, we will, together with the municipality of Hoogeveen, in the end, try to have a suburb of the city of Hoogeveen go to 11 to 1,200 houses connected to hydrogen. So we will repurpose the gas grid to be able to transport hydrogen into the houses, put in new boilers and fuel cell systems to heat the houses, and that will in total go up to 1,200 houses. In the municipality of Groningen, we will do the same in a less extended way. We will use the hydrogen produced from an electrolyzer in an industrial setting in Emmen. We will do the same in Delfzijl at the chemical complex. There are some very nice applications as well. We will also try and use hydrogen as a energy source for data centers. Most data centers in the Netherlands, at least, are located in the cities, and the electricity grid, the power grid in the cities is overburdened. So you cannot extend your power, your data center anymore. But by using hydrogen, you could have another way of looking into that. So if you can run a data center on hydrogen, because it can be converted into electricity and secure the operation. Also, we're looking for, and we are demonstrating, the use of shore power for vessels. Whenever you're in the harbor, like in Tallinn, mostly the ships who are on the quay have their engines running and contributing to a burdening of the environment through their exhaust. If you use, let's say, shore power, and in this case it will be shore power using hydrogen as feedstock, you will not have this overburdening of the environment. A lot of uses, something 300 to 400 tons per year, can go up more. And the last one is mobility, of course. I think mobility is one of the most visible applications of hydrogen. Buses, we will have a total bus fleet in the northern Netherlands of about 32 buses, fuel cell electric buses, of which 10 are directly related to this project. We will have a fleet of about 100 passenger vehicles only from this project, some 10 to 15 light vans, heavy duty vans, but also heavy duty trucks are envisaged to be utilized in the region. And of course, you need a solid refilling infrastructure for that. So in the project, we try to develop at least four HRSs in addition to the available 3 which are already in operation. And of course, we will also use and try to use our maritime industry to build ships on hydrogen, because a ship is a very big consumer of energy, and hydrogen can perform an excellent job in that, especially if the ships are running from city to city and passing the inner harbor, the inner city region. Then, of course, as mentioned, we will look into the utilization of underground gas storage, because the gas storage, the hydrogen storage, would be, let's say, more or less the holy grail. You can produce the energy, but you have to use it, but you also have to have a buffer. And underground gas storage, underground hydrogen storage is an excellent example of that. We will also look into and develop retrofitting of natural gas systems, construct new pipelines to connect industries, etc., and do a lot of preparatory work, and also invest in trailers, because you have to bring hydrogen to the fueling stations. Otherwise, your vehicles will not have any fuel. This is a frightening picture. I'm aware of that, but this is more or less the project in a nutshell. Let me just briefly explain what you're seeing. To the top left side, you will see the windmills, which is more or less analogous for the North Sea. Then you will see the big green power lines on top, and to the right-hand side, and you will see 4 boxes. The boxes are the clusters in which the project is developed. We have 4 clusters: an industry cluster near sea, an industry cluster around a storage facility, an industry cluster more or less somewhat deeper inland in Emmen, and the mobility cluster. And the projects we just named in the three sectors are depicted in this graph, because we will have a vast electrolyzer potential at the chemical park, 20 and 50 megawatts, etc. We will distribute the hydrogen in newly constructed pipelines, bringing the hydrogen to, for instance, the methanol production, to be used as a feedstock for the aviation fuel, the green kerosene. There is a plan for at least a 100 megawatt electrolyzer, which will eventually run up to 600 megawatts and also be inspiring to this gigawatt electrolyzer by North H2, which is envisaged. So this is a feasibility system. The underground storage will be prepared to be able to cope with hydrogen. The data center will be in. The municipality with its 11 to 1200 houses on hydrogen will be developed. Another electrolyzer system downwards south will be quite significant in size as well. Will be directly transported over a 4-kilometer pipeline to the industry. The industry will convert the hydrogen as in an will use the hydrogen in an admixture in first instance with natural gas, but then eventually run to 100%. Fuel up the industry. There will be a T connection to a fueling station, fueling the buses. We will have the trailers in operation to bring around, to travel around the hydrogen. Other fueling stations will be in place. We will have the buses, the trucks, the vans, the passenger vehicles, and the ships in operation. And in the end, if we have this big system available, we can make the rollout from the region to other regions. And this is a very prominent role for GasUnie, our national gas transition system operator, which will be enabled to connect to other regions in the Netherlands, but also abroad, because you have to bring the hydrogen to the markets, of course. Some other parties are involved, 31 in total. I think the total investment volume will be around 80 to 90 million euros. And this is the storyline I would like to present to you, but we have to invite you to come to our heaven. It's a very nice region to come to, and we are very willing to also engage in collaborations with Estonian partners, very much so. And I would really like to conclude with my very deep respect for the organizations which helped us getting this in operation, and that's the Fuel Cell Hydrogen Joint Undertaking by Mr. Biwak, and of course the European Union. Let me put a little political remark in that. We need more money in the innovation sector, especially in the FCHU. And by that, I want to conclude my presentation, and I'm open for discussion and questions afterwards. So thank you very much. And I try to memorize what it is in Estonian, but I will not try to do it because I probably will make a wrong impression. Or let me try it. It's Yagul.
Yeah, good. Yes. Thank you, Patrick, for the great presentation. And definitely, Northern Netherlands is the best example of for all the other regions, for the rest of the countries in Europe, how to really track the funds and how to really build up so fast such kind of advanced infrastructure as you already have done. But when we already started talking about funding and supporting mechanisms, then I think it's the right time to give the floor to Bart Biebek to talk about the opportunities in European Union by the fuel cell and hydrogen joint undertaking.
Yes, thank you very much for the nice introduction. And also it's great to be here and to be able to explain a little bit what we are doing at the European Union level for hydrogen, and as well, I mean, how we supported Estonia so far, and what are the potentials in Estonia related to hydrogen. So, okay. So first of all, very shortly who we are, because it's always important. So we are a public-private partnership We have 3 partners. We have the industry grouping, which is Hydrogen Europe, 150 members, important. 40% are small and medium enterprises. So it's really a group of people really living from innovation. And then the Hydrogen Europe research is about 80 members. That's another association. And in the middle, of course, we have the European Commission, represented by the DG Move, which is transport, DG NR for energy, and DG RTD for the research. We are working on 3 main things, on energy and on transport, but also horizontal things. We call it cross-cutting, it's standardization, consumer awareness, etc. Today, we have 263 projects in Europe, supported by 985 million euro of taxpayers' money. Of course, this is a public-private partnership, so the private members put it a little bit more than 1 billion euro as well into all these projects. So together, we have spent nearly 2 billion euros so far. We didn't do that just for fun, no, because there was a clear reason why we did that. And for that, we made a hydrogen roadmap for Europe. And you can see here by 2050 that all the energy that we will require in 2050, 24% can be supplied by hydrogen in Europe. We will, of course, abate CO2 emissions by 560 million tons per year, generate 820 billion euros of annual revenues. Also, we will reduce further other emissions, of course, but also we will create 5.4 million jobs in Europe. And here is the very important message I want to bring is that, of course, every member state, the 27 member states, it's their own responsibility to see how much of those jobs will be allocated into your country. And of course, you have countries like the Netherlands here today who are very much advanced, and for sure they will take up a big part of those jobs there. But it's every country's own decision. I would say that in Estonia, we're already working together with you. We have one very important beneficiary for us, it's Elcogen. I believe he's clearly your star in Estonia. Also, Elcogen, they got a 12 million euro loan. It was the first company in the Baltic countries that got a loan from the EIB. I think that's quite important. They are participating in 4 projects at the moment, Elcogen. We have spent so far 600,000 euro. You can see the different projects there, but also Parnu is also the university there is also an area with whom we working together. So here you can see what Elcogen is actually producing. These are this kind of the fuel cells with the stacks here. But Elcogen is also supplying to Convion, which is just located just across the river or the sea in Finland. And we see as well that a lot of manufacturing is actually happening in Finland because the conditions there, the operating conditions or the support from the government is better than in Estonia. And it's maybe something that also you as a country could have a look in, how to keep also manufacturing jobs, not only research jobs, but really manufacturing jobs into the country and support them. When we look to the Estonian NECP, the National Energy and Climate Plan, actually we are doing now a review of all the NECPs, and we looked on the potential or the opportunities for hydrogen into all the member states. And when we look to Estonia itself, what was a good point is that you have mentioned hydrogen in your NECP. I think it's really good because not all the European countries did that. And also the result was actually there's a very clear substantial opportunity for Estonia in hydrogen. Estonia has also signed the Hydrogen Initiative in Austria in 2018, and basically you plan to address all the things that already Patrick and Noé mentioned before, all the different sectors by hydrogen. What are the opportunities? Well, by 2030, Estonia could, if you go for the ambitious scenario, could create 9,000 jobs and have an annual added value or revenue of around 900 million euro. I think this is very significant and maybe something you should seriously look at. Also, below there you see a table how much terawatt hours of hydrogen you could create, and we are about 5 terawatt hours hydrogen per year you could create in an ambitious scenario. I mean, We will send you the details later on by the end of the month. Normally it will be finished and then you will get all of it, but this is a kind of sneak preview. Of course, we're working in Europe internationally together, and the Netherlands is, and many of these initiatives also the Netherlands are there. As I mentioned already, Estonia has signed the Hydrogen Initiative. For the rest, mainly it's always the European Union who is there, but we are more than happy to share also every learnings or what we are doing there in the other initiatives worldwide. And of course, you're also more than welcome to join as a country in all these initiatives. We started back in 2016 with a Regions Initiative because we believe that the real deployment of this technology is really driven by regions. And so we started this initiative and we asked to all the regions in Europe to join us in this endeavor. And actually from Estonia, Tallinn, the city of Tallinn was signed an MOU with us. And then what came out of that initiative was actually the European Hydrogen Valleys Partnership. At the moment, there are 32 regions there. It's also led by North Netherlands, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, and Normandy and Aragon in Spain. These 32 regions were really regions that in our initiative, original initiative, were regions that wanted to go faster. And they grouped themselves in this European Hydrogen Valleys Partnership. Also, all these discussions that we had and all these initiatives led also to the project development assist that I will explain you in a minute, but also on the call topic on the hydrogen valleys, which finally Heaven won. The project development assist, we started, this was a project that we started at the beginning of this year that because several regions needed support, financial support, but also technical support to mature their projects. And so in February, we launched a call for expression of interest. We got 35 applications, including from Estonia, from Tartu in Estonia, who wanted to work on CHP. We have done all the evaluations, and because we could only fund around 10 or 11 of these projects, and so we selected 11. And I can tell you that Estonia will be part of the observers network because there's also a region in France who is working on a similar topic, and then we decided that they will have to work together. As well, on our website, you will find the value chain study and a map, and with everywhere over Europe, where are the value or the supply chain and value chain located. So please go to our website and you can look at this. It's quite interesting. And this was actually used to input to DG Grow to create the IPSE. We come later to that, to the IPSE. Also on our website, we have a funding and financing website where you can basically go to and look for your project. What is the best financing location, opportunities, everything is there. Just, I would say, go to that. And in general, in Europe, there are four major, let's say, support functions. Of course, we have the partnership, the FCHJU, which will be called in future Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking. Then we have the European Connecting Europe Facility, CEF, we call it in short. We have the Innovation Fund, and we have the IPSE. And I think very soon we will have another announcement, somewhere beginning of July, will be the Hydrogen Alliance. First, about the Clean Hydrogen Partnership. So this is the successor of the FCHJU. And in this successor, we will work on three main things: on hydrogen production, on hydrogen distribution, and end use. Production and end use already we do today. The distribution part will be the new thing for us in the next framework program for the next 6-7 years. In the end use, you will see that we move mainly to heavy duty. Another point for another focusing point in the next partnership will be the supply chain. So we really need to scale up faster. So we will spend a bit more focus on that. We will continue with the hydrogen valleys. So sorry, Patrick, we will have more hydrogen valleys in Europe than only yours, but at least you can claim that you are the first. Because we believe that only one hydrogen valley cannot do it at all. So we need to have more. And then finally, it would be great if we could connect them through the pipelines from Gasunie, for example. We have to cooperate also with others. You will see that there are other partnerships as well who will work a little bit around hydrogen. We will have 2.0, which is mainly cars, buses, and trucks. We will have Waterboard, which is on maritime and ports. Transport EU Rail will be the trains, and Clean Aviation is another partnership who work on hydrogen planes. What is foreseen for the financially, or at least what is the request, is not yet foreseen. So first of all, the industry will invest 52 billion euro in the next 10 years by 2030. For that, they would like to work together with the EU on an 8.7 billion euro investment program. It's still always public-private, you see. And then inside research and innovation, that's where my program come in. They would like to work on a 2.6 billion euro program, which half is supported by public money. This 1.3 billion euro means that it would be a doubling of the budget of what we have today. And here again, I think it would be very important, as Patrick already mentioned, to support this doubling of the research budget because we have to also move to EU 13. We have to start also demonstrations in your country, for example, and additionally, we have to go to heavy duty, which is very, very expensive. So it will be important to have also a stronger involvement of the member states and the region, even in the next program, and have the strong international cooperation, as the way already mentioned. The Innovation Fund, this is the other funding mechanism. This is basically based on the emission trading system. So you know that all those big companies have to put money for the carbon that they emit in a big pot. And now the first call for projects from that big pot will happen. You see that they expect around 10 billion euro to invest up to 2030. So what is the focus? Big flagship projects. So here is big with a European value added and a significant emission reduction. So it's not like the small projects. It's really, you have to look at here and bigger. They will share the risk with the project promoters to really demonstrate first of a kind technology. Also, they will support cross-cutting projects that would lead also to emission reductions in other sectors. So this kind of project would be very beneficial and welcome. How will it work? There will be a 2 stages application. So first there will be an expression of interest, there will be an assessment, and then a second part will be the full application. The criteria is of course on all these things here: cost efficiency, scalability, etc. Also, the support will be 60% of the additional capex and opex, and also the grants can be dispersed really in a very flexible way, as basically it's agreed with the consortia. Also, this innovation fund has the possibility to combine it with several European instruments. I think this is very, very important. So even with the FCHJU instrument, you would be able also to combine it. The Connecting Europe facility, the CEF for 2021-2027. So 60%, it was decided that 60% of the CEF expenditure must contribute to the climate. I think that's very good. 40% of general envelope and 50% of the cohesion envelope will have to go, I mean, as you can read, to more sustainable things. So hydrogen will fall under that as well. The actions will have to be on the core and the comprehensive TEN-T corridors. There will be a maximum co-funding rate of 50% in the general envelope, especially in new technologies and innovation for alternative fuels. And the first multi-annual work program, hopefully we can launch it by the end of the year, which would cover all the calls for the first 3 years. There is also a possibility to adopt joint work programs on specific topics like connected and autonomous mobility. And there the highest co-funding rate, of course, will be taken into account. And if you do such kind of joint work program, there's a potential to get a 10% top up. Also, synergetic elements would be allowed. For example, when you look to hydrogen now, if you have a transport project, but in that project you would also generate renewable energy through electrolyzers, for example, you would be able to get also some support up to 20% for that. So I think this is important that it's not only on transport, but also somehow energy. On the process, well, the proposal has been put forward in 2018, 12.9 billion euro, and we are waiting for the agreement between the member states on the MFF, like many people in Europe are doing at the moment. And on the work program, as I said, the work program we are prepared, but we have to wait until the MFF is agreed. Also, there was when the Green Deal was announced, there was also mentioned something about supporting hydrogen refueling. And you can see that they will do a funding call specifically on infrastructure already this year. But again, as I said, it depends all on the MFF. IPCEIs, important projects of common European interest. The industry has expressed, of course, a huge interest when we announced the IPCEIs. 11 projects were presented, 65 billion euro total investment, 22 member states covered, and actually your member state, Estonia, is also part of one of the IPCEIs, which is called the H2GO IPCEI. Although it's rather still in an observatory role, but still you're part of it, and I think it's very important. This is about rolling out infrastructure and mainly then also looking to trucks and buses. So we hope that probably Estonia will launch very soon, if you have not done yet, the call for expression of interest for your local companies in Estonia to take part of the IPCEI process. And we hope that we can, in Europe, approve the first IPCEIs by the end of the year. The Green Deal call, and this is my last slide. So in September, there will be a call under Horizon 2020 still with the remaining money. And this will be, so as I said, September will be the call will launch. The deadline will be January 21. And off the record, I can tell you there are 2 topics which will be related to hydrogen. There will be one topic on a minimum 100 megawatt electrolyzer building, which will get financial support. And the second topic will be on green ports or green airports. So so it's a combined, so you can choose a maritime airport, a maritime port or an airport, but also there hydrogen projects would be eligible. I leave it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bart. Yes, the strategy is really important topic in Estonia right now, and I believe there's also really intense negotiation about possible governmental support. But I think that the right person to give a presentation on that and some information is Mrs. Kristi Klaas. So the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you. Hi, also from my side, it has been also for me extremely interesting. So I suppose also for all the participants, it has been very informative. And all the things that Bart already mentioned, I think I won't repeat them because he had a very good overview about the developments also in Estonia. As we are a little bit behind the schedule, I tried to be rather quick so that we would also have time for Q&As at the end. Yeah, my name is Kristi, and I'm the Deputy Secretary General at the Ministry of Environment, responsible for climate policy and strategical planning. And as you all know, climate policy is most of the horizontal policies that all exist, because basically all the policies need to be aligned with climate policy in order there will be a chance to meet the climate targets. So the work that we have been doing with all the ministries has been extensive and very, very interesting. We had many working groups last year when we discussed in details how we would reach our 2030 climate targets. And one of the biggest partners we're working with is the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications. And when you look at their portfolio responsibilities, then it's evident that they form the biggest part of the climate policy sectors, actually, starting with energy sector, together with building sector, transport, entrepreneurship, innovation. It all has a direct link with climate policy. And now, looking from the side of Ministry of Environment, besides being responsible for climate change mitigation and adaptation, we are looking at things also from the side of pollution control and environment and nature protection. So the working relationship has been very close, and also the hydrogen topic has been one on which we have been working together. So the cooperation has been good. So on this slide, I will be rather brief, but just to give you an overview of the GHG emissions starting from 1990 till 2018, there are no latest data available at the moment. So on 2019, I don't have any official data. However, maybe I can say a few words about that. So here in this figure, you can see the Estonian GHG emissions broken down by IPCC sectors. And by 2018, Estonia has reduced its emissions by more than 50% compared to 1990. The Parliament of Estonia adopted the low carbon strategy in April 2017, which sets the target for 2050. And in this rather a vision document that sets long-term greenhouse gas emission reduction targets and also policy guidelines for adjusting with the impact of climate change. The principles and guidelines in this vision document has to be taken into account when renewing and implementing the cross-sectoral and sectoral strategies and also national development plans. Our goal is to reduce GHG emissions by 70% by 2050. And next to Denmark, this is one of the most ambitious goals in the EU, and which is also reflected in our national energy and climate plan, which has been submitted to the Commission. Here on the slide, you can clearly see that the largest contributor is energy sector, which in 2018 contributed around 88% of total greenhouse gas emissions. However, the picture has been different last year when the greenhouse gases, the emissions have been reduced even by almost 40%. But we will get the official data in about a month. So then when there's interest, I think I can share the latest data. This percentage actually includes also transport, which is about 12% of the total emissions. The second largest sector is agriculture, which accounted for 7.2% of the total emissions in 2018. And the other sectors are smaller. Now coming to the role of hydrogen, we clearly see the great potential for future use of green hydrogen produced with renewable electricity. And we have a great potential of offshore wind parks. And there I can see the international cooperation is inevitable, very important. So I hope that there will be concrete projects on the table very soon. Coming to the discussions that we've had, giving you an example from transport sector. When we are talking about the passenger cars, then there are lots of alternatives available, which are more environmental friendly than diesel car, for example. So we can talk about biogas, electricity, etc. And also, I think for the part of public transportation, we have alternatives available. However, there are some sectors where the alternatives are not widespread, or they don't exist yet when we're talking about heavy-duty vehicles, especially long-distance heavy-duty vehicles, and also long-distance public transport. And also when we had the discussions with other ministries, then they have pointed out that the possibilities for special equipment, for example, in military, the alternatives are not available yet. However, I can see a clear interest by those sectors to find really the alternatives which could be used also in the nearest future. And the share of renewable energy in final consumption is increasing in Estonia. So since wind and solar energy are unmanageable energy sources, there is a need for storage technologies, and hydrogen is certainly one of the options for storing energy. And even though green hydrogen isn't cost effective yet, in the future it might become a lowest cost option for storing large quantities of electricity. Coming to the stakeholders, we have a wide range of different stakeholders that we have engaged already in the discussions. Starting with Estonian Hydrogen Association, which was established in 2016. We have been working with them. And we have also very active private sector. Our academia is on a very high level, and our local governments are becoming more and more active on hydrogen issues. They are interested in the options that are available, especially now when the new MFF proposal was put on the table, and there is more information available about different financing sources, about Horizon program, for example. When local governments are seeing the opportunities that are proposed, then I can clearly see that they see their role in this energy transformation. So just give you an example, the one of the emissions that is available under Horizon program that will be available is the 100 climate neutral cities by 2030. There, the local governments see their role, and then I'm very, very happy about that. And there are also already well-functioning companies in Estonia regarding fuel cells and hydrogen. Elcogen has been mentioned already, and they have been founded in 2001, and the company has developed the next generation of fuel cells and delivering the market's most efficient solid oxide cell technology suitable for electrolysis and fuel cell operation. And also Elcogen was named also the winner of the innovation category in the grand final of 2019 European Business Awards. And in Estonia also Power Up Energy Technologies is there, and also the representative of the company is also moderating this discussion today. The company produces next generation hydrogen fuel cell based electric generators and also has a great potential there. And also when we are talking about academia, about science, University of Tartu and National Institute of Chemical Physics and Biophysics have been very active in this field and have been our partners on this road. So coming to the next step. So we have created the working group on hydrogen, where all these stakeholders have been participating, and the discussion and the information that we have gained from there has been very, very useful. It is clear that we need a roadmap or a strategy on hydrogen in order to set up clear steps where we need to go. And there's a little bit of also the chicken and egg question, which comes first, if the demand needs to come first or the production. So it needs to be well thought through. And of course, there are some gaps still and missing data that we need in order to set up a clear roadmap for us. So for that purpose, a public tender will be launched on the survey of hydrogen production, transmission and use. So the study will give us a bigger picture how to make best of use of hydrogen. And we are doing it together with Minister of Economic Affairs and also Government Office. And also to mention that the Minister of Economic Affairs is planning an innovation tender in autumn for the first hydrogen pilot project. So I'm also very looking forward to that one. And what we are also doing from the side of Ministry of Environment, we are discussing how to scale up the financial support for green technologies. EU ETS Innovation Fund is one of them, which will be opened, and our Environmental Investment Center is going to provide technical support to our companies in the applying process. And there will be more information regarding this topic available in July. But also we are looking into other programs, how to scale up the financing. And of course, not to mention the cooperation with other EU countries to raise awareness in order to know what kind of developments are in place already in the other countries, what kind of cooperation opportunities there would be is essential. And of course, we need to talk more about the topic, and that's why we are here. So, and quickly to conclude, we see that hydrogen has its place in the future, and also already in the nearest future. It is the priority of our minister, and we want to set up, take clear steps in this road. Although this image shows blue hydrogen as well as green hydrogen production, Estonia is more looking towards the latter option, so production of green hydrogen. But we need to figure out what the role of hydrogen will be. So the experience and knowledge from the countries like Netherlands and our Dutch colleagues is very valuable to us. So thank you from my side. I will stop here, and then we will have time for Q&As. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it's as we are a little bit behind the schedule. Let's jump immediately to the Q&A. So from the hydrogen strategy, as we just heard, Estonia is really in its so-called baby steps and in the beginning of the process. I think it's the right question to address all of you, how, especially Bart, Noe, and Patrick, how the collaboration could be taken into the action, and how, let's say, the Netherlands and EU overall could help Estonia with the strategy making and the road mapping.
I mean,
so Noe, maybe you start. I see you opened your microphone.
Well, just to be ready, but I'm happy to say a few words, but I'm sure Bart will have probably a more thorough approach to this. But what I could just say is really it is a relatively new field in terms of policy making. I mean, not so much in terms of projects, as you've seen from the European Union has already been supporting projects for quite some time, luckily enough, so we have a basis. But in terms of the policy attention, also in the Netherlands, it may seem, like very elaborate, and it is, but it's all very recent. It is really all from the last 2 years. So it's not something you cannot easily catch up with. And I think because the Netherlands has this strategy, Germany has just come out this week with their strategy, Norway, Portugal, etc. So there are a number of countries that, and you can see, of course, and read them and catch up and see what is most applicable, what is most useful for Estonia, given your situation, of course. You always have to base it on your own characteristics. But I'm sure that all of these countries and the experts in these countries and from universities, etc., will be more than willing to, to assist you or to do whatever you think can be useful for your country in terms of, carrying over some experiences on what we have been doing and how we have been approaching it. So just want to say that as a very general statement, that we are really open to discuss that with you, whatever, could be useful for you. But again, you always have to base it on your own local national situation, given also your, what your neighboring countries are doing, also very important. I can say a few words maybe later on that, how we are approaching that.
Thank you. Bart, would you like to add something, especially when we talk about the strategy? I heard FCHGU is coming out with a strategy pretty soon. So maybe you can give.
I will elaborate a bit on that. Yeah, I will elaborate a bit on that. Not the FCHGU will not come out with a strategy. The European Union, the Commission will come out with the strategy, a hydrogen strategy at the beginning of July. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed, even though I know the contents, I'm not allowed to explain today what is in the strategy itself. Maybe some things that already are publicly known is the Hydrogen Alliance, for sure. That will be a part of the strategy, where more or less 90 CEOs will sit together and try to scale up and push the deployments of hydrogen fuel cell products in the European market as fast as possible, because we should not forget that Europe is one of the leading continents in the world on hydrogen and fuel cells, and Europe wants to keep that leadership, and that's why the hydrogen strategy is there. This hydrogen can bring jobs and growth to the Union, as I explained to you in my presentation, but it will not come if we sit on our chair and do nothing. We will have to act, and fast, and that is what the hydrogen strategy is all about. Quick action. The IPCEIs will be part of that, as I explained. So it's a combination of many things, but to make it happen. Because if we don't, we lose another leadership to maybe Asia. We lost the solar panels already to Asia. We lost the batteries to Asia. Hydrogen is something now we have, and we should make sure that we can keep it. And there, all the 27 EU member states have a responsibility, and because we have to do that all together, because this is our strength, working together in Europe and make sure that it works. This is our strength, and this is how it should happen. So how can we help further? Is, of course, I said that we have analyzed your NECP on the potential of the hydrogen in your country. We will share it by the end of June. Basically, I think it would serve to a fantastic input to the company who wins the tender that you are issuing in Estonia, because basically, I think big part of the job is already done. I think all the calculations based on your renewables, and there is a low ambitious plan, there's a high ambitious plan. We calculated the added values, the jobs, in which segment you can have hydrogen. Everything is basically there already for you, which then can help this tenderer to make the final report and to detail it much more. This is one area where we can help. A second area is exactly the regions. I think there's a big parallel we can draw a big parallel between the Netherlands and Estonia. I mean, the Netherlands, the North Netherlands specifically, had the problems with the natural gas extraction and the earthquakes, as we know well. But you also have an issue in Estonia, because there are some parts of your country that are still generating or giving the raw material to produce power in a not very sustainable way. And these people probably in future will have to change as well. And maybe that creates some social tensions and so on. So I believe that you can learn a lot from the Netherlands, because they are a little bit advanced compared to you in Estonia, and they have already made some steps, and I think you can learn from them so that maybe you do immediately the right things. Not to say that they did everything wrong in the Netherlands, but for sure they learned some things that they say, that was maybe not the best option, you know. So, and I think this kind of dialogue would be very important, because now you are the starting point to go through the same process as them. So that's for me clearly a parallel between that. And so the North Netherlands made a hydrogen valley in the north as one of the, I'd say, way of tackling this transition. And maybe we have to look also in Estonia to have a hydrogen valley in that area, for example, where shale oil or lignite or I don't know, coal is there still. I think create such a kind of a hydrogen valley would be good, because it draws on attention. It shows what is possible with hydrogen, and it's on public awareness. Because in this transition story, it's important to also have the people backing up that transition, because it will have an impact in Estonia. I know the prices of electricity are cheap at the moment, or quite cheap. Maybe in future it might have an impact on that. So you need to bring also the population into the whole story. And I think the Netherlands did that already quite well. Also here, I believe you have some learnings.
Good, thank you. Also, as the research and innovation budget in relation to the Green Deal has been doubled, the question is how Estonian universities, research institutes, companies could really contribute and take part of this huge transition.
Well, well, it's not yet doubled, it's under discussion. I mean, the request is to get it doubled. And I would really appreciate if the Estonian government, especially then the area of research ministry, would support the doubling of the hydrogen research, because, as I said, we need to go to EU 13, and you're part of EU 13 as Estonia. And I think, to be very blunt here, I mean, if you look on the map and you see where the Europe has funded really demonstration projects, it's in the EU 15. Unfortunately, not yet so much in EU 13. I think it's about time that we start also there. And though that means that, yes, we will need a bigger budget to make sure that also we can start doing real deployments in the EU 13 and in Estonia. And of course, your companies and like PowerUp or Elcogen, but also the universities will be crucial, because they have to write the topics, you know, they have to write what they would like to do. So the creativity we expect from them to come forward with ideas, then we can see, okay, these are good ideas, yes, we should support. That's how it works. So they have to work, but I have to say that the Estonian universities and companies are quite well connected with Europe. I mean, we have very frequently discussions with them. I myself, I go almost every year once to Estonia. We have good discussions over there as well. So I believe this is quite good. I mean, if now a little bit push from the Estonian government would be there, also to help them, I think we will be there, and you will see very soon projects also in Estonia.
Thank you. Some questions from the audience as well. So one of the interesting questions was that if you're turning your natural gas infrastructure into the infrastructure for the hydrogen, how the natural gas will be transported after that. I think, Noy, you can answer to that question the easiest.
Sure. Well, I think maybe I didn't pay enough attention to explaining that, but I think also Patrick said something about that. So you have to see it this way, that we are basically reducing a lot of our current gas production. We are closing down the biggest field in a couple of years' time, which basically means that you know, we will have a lot of pipeline capacity which will become available to transport something else. So, I mean, we are in the lucky circumstances, and that is quite unique in Europe also, that our total amount of pipeline capacity is huge. So since again we don't need some of that capacity anymore, we can easily fully repurpose that for 100% transportation of hydrogen, while at the same time still continuing to transport through other pipelines the gas. And so this is going to, again, we are ahead of the game, but this is going to happen in most of Europe. At least the countries that are now currently using natural gas. Why? Because, well, natural gas, you know, towards 2050, we will all have to be phasing that out, since it's not CO2 free. So if you want, you know, total net zero emissions in 2050, sooner or later we will have to get rid of the gas, and this is why this, you know, this big picture of hydrogen backbone can already be realized before 2050, simply by repurposing part of the pipelines also in other countries to transportation of hydrogen. And there, where you are not able to do it, you can also use, of course, blending. You can also blend hydrogen into the gas pipelines up to, some people say, it depends on the pipelines, 10%, 20%, or even more. So that is another alternative also to quickly have some uptake.
Thank you. Patrick, do you have anything to add?
Well, yes, I agree with Noe. It's about, you know, you're running down the gas production, and thereby you will probably liberate capacity to transport hydrogen, because the capacity is manifold. There are a lot of pipelines coming from our region to the south, etc. So we will probably just either make one totally for hydrogen or more, and then in the end it could be an mixing strategy. It's also very depending on what the market demands. But I think from a personal point of view, I think it would be very good to put in as much pure hydrogen as possible and not dilute it immediately. But that's all based on, let's say, the tailoring aspects from the industry. But the question was, what are we going to do with the pipelines? Well, in the end, if you don't transport natural gas anymore, well, put in hydrogen. It can be done quite efficiently.
Also, question in relation to the industries. I believe Dutch industries were not as hydrogen consumption intensive in 10 years ago or 20 years ago. How the transition was made when we talk about the Estonian industry and its shift from the, let's say, natural gas consumption or other chemical consumption, and shifting to consumption of the hydrogen and towards the hydrogen technology overall. How has this one been taking place? Is there any support from the government for the users of hydrogen, development of hydrogen technology, etc.?
You want me to answer this, Ivar?
Yes, no.
Okay.
I think
sure.
Both you and Patrick, I think you know the best.
Well, I'm not sure I completely understand the question. So what I try to explain is that current industry is already producing and using a lot of hydrogen, but it is produced from fossil fuels, particularly gas. Yeah. But this is already the case. This has happened already for many decades, and the same is true for countries like Germany. So the Netherlands, because we have so much heavy industry, like, as I said before, refineries, chemical industry, steel, we are the second largest producer currently and user of gray hydrogen in Europe, after Germany. Germany also has that. And actually there's even a whole purely private network of hydrogen pipelines in the Rotterdam area, Rotterdam Harbor, ranging all the way to Belgium, Antwerp, and even the north of France. It's a completely privately owned pipeline complex run by Air Liquide. So that hasn't happened already for a long time. There has been no support. That's a completely just a simple private sector initiative that is related to the specific technologies that they are using, you know, in refineries, in chemical industry, etc. So that already exists, but what my point was, this is an excellent starting point because number one, it currently now, you know, day in, day out produces a lot of CO2. And actually 10% of our natural gas consumption is going only to produce this gray hydrogen. So tackling that and trying in the next decades to decarbonize that gray hydrogen, simply replacing the gray hydrogen by blue hydrogen and green hydrogen, of course, will be more costly, but it is in a relatively easy way to start getting rid of CO2, number one, and number two, to build up the infrastructure for clean hydrogen. And the same is the objective of the what they want to do in Germany. Of course, how to make that happen is a different story, but you understand what I'm saying. And then, of course, you have the new applications in heavy-duty transportation, in heating, etc., and next generation technologies also within industry. For instance, in the steel industry, you know, you're looking at the more advanced projects are looking at completely replacing all of the fossil fuel inputs into steel making by green hydrogen, like they are doing in the hybrid project in Sweden, green steel. They call it green steel. Fantastic. I mean, that is the potential of hydrogen in the longer term.
Patrick, in relation to the green hydrogen, what are the current capacities of onshore and offshore wind to be used for hydrogen electrolysis today? Also, the photovoltaic systems in northern Netherlands.
Well, we I don't know the exact figures as to now, because it's a developing story. And nowadays there is the biggest offshore wind field called Gemini Park is already in operation in the Netherlands, part of the North Sea. It's 600 megawatts. And we are also quite connected to the German wind parks because they are quite near our northern harbors. They're quite well situated. But looking at the industry demand in the region, it's about 7 gigawatts. And there is no 7 gigawatts already on the North Sea, but that's something. That's a story to be developed. It's a developing story, and we also really need to look into the Green Deal and the new recovery program which is being developed to speed it up, because this is about speeding up and scaling up. We need more and faster. So the industry now, as Noe depicted, is when it's coming to hydrogen, it's predominantly gray, but we are making this turn from gray to green as far as we can in the coming years. So and with that goes the development of offshore wind fields. As you might know, the Netherlands isn't the most sunny country, so having solar panels is good, but the capacity is limited. Offshore wind is far more, let's say, advantageous in magnitude. For solar, we need to go somewhat more down south in Europe, but especially also in your region, I think the offshore wind capacities are quite interesting, and that should be looked upon to see if that can be in some way maybe a business case could be already developed and designed for producing hydrogen, because there is a demand.
Yes, absolutely. And thereby, there's from the audience also a question to Mrs. Christy Klaas. So as from your presentation, it was possible to see that from 1990 to 1991, the reduction of the emissions were enormous, while the similar line was visible from the 1991 to 2019. So what are the strategical now plans to reduce the further the emissions and change this picture, and how maybe it can be copied from the Netherlands, the offshore wind parks, etc., etc.?
Yeah, thank you for the question. To start with a short explanation why the GHG emissions have been reduced so quickly between 1990 and 1993, it was related to major structural changes in the economy after Estonia regained its independence from the Soviet Union. And now, after that, we need, at the political level, we need to have major decisions taken in order to start decreasing the GHG emissions as quickly as we need to reach our targets by 2030. So what steps do we need? So we did a tremendous work last year where we set up concrete steps, concrete investments that need to be taken in order to reach the target. So we analyzed all the sectors, and let's say the biggest chunks of the investments, of course, are related to energy sector. We see the great potential of the offshore wind parks and the changes in the energy sector in general, and also transport sector. It's more challenging. However, there, for example, the electrification of railway and also the guiding the goods transportation from the railway, from the roads to railways, in order to use more environmental friendly transport system is the key. And of course, the EU legislation already has set up concrete targets for let's say public transportation for the vehicles used there. Of course, the cities, local governments need to change all the buses they are using in their local transportation, so, and etc. Of course, the most difficult part is agriculture sector, where I think the academic work is the key, because we don't know many answers yet. So let's say these are the big investments needs that we have. So, and we are hoping that in autumn, when the government starts to discuss on the national budget and the budget plans for the next 4 years, together with the MFF funds, then I'm working towards it that the necessary investments would be set then for the coming years. Maybe it would be a short answer.
Okay, thank you. Time has been flying, and I see there's a lot of questions from the audience, which we unfortunately cannot answer. But to wrap it up, the last question is to actually the Partno and Patrick, also to Christy, to you, how we can go forward, how the collaboration between the Netherlands and the European Union overall can be initiated, and the gears can be changed so that Estonia could move faster with the hydrogen infrastructure development. And what would be the next steps in your mind?
Well, if I may, I think it starts with getting together, having a talk together, sitting together and seeing, let us explain what we do and what are our best practices. And then I think it's very soon we could really come to, let's say, a joint statement on what is the ambition, where can we go to, and just let's try to formulate a collaboration, or in a very flat way, let's try to develop a project. There are good opportunities. So it starts with sitting together. If we can't share, we can never multiply. So we need to reach out. We need to collaborate.
And also in terms of collaboration, I know that also our local governments some of the local governments have found partners. I know that our city, Keila, has one of a very good partner in the Netherlands they are working with. So I think we have to promote that too, so that at the state level, but also the local governments and also the companies would find the match and what they need in the cooperation.
Yeah, if I would have to add, I think all of these suggestions are very useful, and I would say a powerful public-private partnership. You need a couple of champions within the public sector. You need a couple of companies that are really want to move things forward and can develop the projects. And then, yeah, of course, you need then adequate funding for that to make it happen. And internationally, I think in your region, you can play a big role. You can take the lead for, with the Baltics. We have, initiated a whole cooperation with all our neighboring countries in the so-called Pentalateral Energy Forum, and we will launch, after 1 year of work, we will launch a joint political declaration from the Pentalateral Energy Forum, which is the Benelux plus Germany plus France plus Austria, and Switzerland is an observer. We will have one big call for hydrogen. Next Monday, we will launch it, and still Estonia and other countries can join that call. But I mean, within your own region also, you can have an initiative, why not have a cooperation with the Baltic countries and then reach out to Pentalateral Forum, to the Nordics, so that we can have a powerful cooperation internationally also on hydrogen in the north of Europe. Thank you.
And Bart,
maybe from my side as a final word, I think there are three things. For me, I mean, first of all, I would recommend to sign an MOU between ourselves and the Ministry of Research, probably, because in the next framework program, we need to see how we can top up with structural funds. And I know Estonia gets some structural funding also from the Union. So can some part of that structural fund being used also for hydrogen and projects in Estonia? And probably then we can do also top up. So for example, so 1 + 1 is sometimes 3, and this is what we should do. We should sign such a kind of MOU, and happy to start the discussions as soon as possible with Estonia and the related authorities body, which I'm not sure who it is exactly, but I would be happy to learn who it is. Secondly is to identify who could be your champion region in Estonia, and to make sure that they are well connected into Europe. As I mentioned, the smart specialization platform from DG Growth is this Hydrogen Valley platform. It would be good if also they join in that one, because they get a massive amounts of learnings from other regions in Europe. And so I would definitely recommend you to do that. It doesn't cost you any money. It's just more like a strategy, which region you want to tackle and how to do. And the third one is start to inform your citizens. What we did so many times is we organized like a hydrogen tour in the country, in order that citizens can touch a hydrogen car, a hydrogen bus. They understand what is hydrogen, how does it work, how do you generate it, what are the fuel cells. We really need to start doing that in time, because if you come with your strategy and people, or a lot of people don't know what is hydrogen. I mean, hydrogen maybe they still know, fuel cells, forget it, they don't know. So I think it's good if you give them some education, and I think you should start doing that as well, because you can only implement something if you have the support from the population behind you.
These are really good.
We are happy
Yes.
to help there. We are happy to help there, of course, in this kind of information, because we have a lot of tools, a lot of things that we can share with you. Okay.
Yes, I think these were really perfect final remarks. So I really hope that in the future we will have similar events because there's a lot of things to discuss in relation to the hydrogen, and to all participants. There's a good news. You will receive also an email with a link for the recording of today's event. And actually have a nice rest of the afternoon, and hope to see you pretty soon. Thank you for the participants, and thank you for the ministry and also Embassy of the Netherlands. Thank you. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.